Mad kings and queens are a staple in any fantasy novel. The royals who are absolutely crazy and bring about the fall of their own kingdom. However, it is a known fact that many of these characters are inspired from true people throughout history. Some of these real mad kings and queens are worse than anything you'll ever read in a book. All throughout history, there have been many examples of madness in royalty. I mean, while these people were kings and queens, they were still, well, people. They were human, and because of this, they were susceptible to any other mental illness. Additionally, these royals were usually more prone to madness because of the massive inbreeding within the royal families, as well as the pressure of having to be king or queen. Today, we'll be traveling to different time periods and countries to examine this madness, most especially in queens, and see what could have affected them to go so mad, and if, in today's standards, they were really even mad at all. Just as a disclaimer, I will be centering on European monarchs as there's just more information available about them. However, if there are monarchs from different regions that you guys know about, please let me know in the comments and I would love to look into them. Our first royal is probably one of the most famous cases of madness found in queens. Joanna I of Castile was born to Queen Isabella I of Castile and King Ferdinand II of Aragon on November 6, 1479. You might know her parents for unifying modern-day Spain and being responsible for the Spanish Inquisition, as well as funding Christopher Columbus's transatlantic voyages. You might also know her sister, Catherine of Aragon, who went off to be the first wife of Henry VIII. As you can see, Joanna was somehow always in the spotlight with her famous family members. Joanna was born third in line to the throne of Castile and Aragon. However, after the deaths of her older brother and sister, she became heir apparent to both thrones. As I said before, Joanna was the daughter of Queen Isabella, who was infamously known for her devout Catholicism, and was mainly responsible for the Spanish Inquisition. If you don't already know, the Spanish Inquisition was a mission by the Catholic Church to find and punish heresy all throughout Europe and the newly colonized Americas. It brought about the torture and persecution of many Jews, Muslims, and others who were not Catholic. Seeing that her mother was one of the main contenders of the Inquisition, Joanna was obviously very scared of her. As a child and teenager, Joanna wasn't very religious. She showed little devotion to Catholicism, which alarmed her mother greatly. As punishment, it was rumored that Joanna would be subjected to cruel punishments like la cuerda, or the rope. This punishment consisted of her being suspended by a rope and having weights attached to her feet. Yeah, pretty brutal. Even though she was only a child, Catholic priests accused her of corruption and complained about her refusal to confess to heresy. Even if Joanna feared her mother, she still loved her, and when her mother fell ill, Joanna displayed her first signs of madness. Joanna refused to eat or sleep during her mother's illness, which might seem normal behavior for someone who is extremely worried. However, it was later followed by a mad rage when afterwards she wanted to see her husband in Flanders, but was denied access due to France and Castile being at war. So yeah, her childhood wasn't the best, but hey, she was married off when she was only 16, so was her marriage life any better? Unfortunately, no. Joanna was married to Philip the Handsome, son of Maximilian I, Holy Roman Emperor, and Mary of Burgundy. After Joanna's mother died, Joanna became the next heir to the Castilian throne. Consequently, her husband kept Joanna confined in hopes to press his claim for the Castilian throne over her father, Ferdinand II. Many campaigns were held against Ferdinand by Philip to inherit the throne. Philip was actually successful as the procurators of Cortes swore their allegiance to Philip and Joanna, and their son Charles as the heir apparent. Despite the fact that Philip kept Joanna locked up for most of his campaign, he did wish to rule alongside his wife. Joanna loved her husband even after he confined her. In 1506, Philip died of typhoid fever, and Joanna would display her most infamous act of madness. It was reported that Joanna refused to separate from Philip's remains for a disturbingly long time. Even while pregnant, Joanna traveled with Philip's remains for 668 kilometers, or 416 miles, which would have taken 6.5 hours, just so that she can see his burial. It was even rumored that at his funeral, Joanna would open the casket not only to embrace Philip's dead body, but also to kiss it. While alive, Joanna's husband spread many rumors about Joanna's madness, due to her continuously flying into jealous rages about all his mistresses, allegedly even attacking one. Even after his death, Joanna wasn't free from the stigma surrounding her, as many people did in fact believe that she was mad, especially after the way she acted with Philip's death, reinforcing the rumors. Many questioned if Joanna was truly fit to rule the newly unified Spain. She did rule as Queen Regent of Castile for a few months, while waiting for her son to come of age and inherit the throne. However, her own father, who had at this point grown a hatred of the late Philip for his campaigns against him, overthrew his own daughter and locked her up in a monastery. She was only visited twice by her father in the next 11 years, and the only companion she truly had through this whole ordeal was her youngest child, Catalina. After her father died, her son Charles, who became the Holy Roman Emperor, finally became monarch of Castile and Aragon. He kept his mother exactly where she was, and did not attempt to free her or make her conditions in the convent any better. Instead, he stole Catalina from her and married her off to the King of Portugal. From then on, Charles forbade anybody from visiting her, and Joanna died alone at the age of 75 on April 12, 1555. So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Joanna had a pretty rough life, always being manipulated by her parents, husband, and even her own child. However, is this any excuse for the madness she displayed? I mean, she is to this day known as Juana the Loca, Spanish for Joanna the Mad, so there must be some silver lining, right? Historians suspect that Joanna was most definitely suffering from many mental illnesses, like depression and schizophrenia. However, nowadays those mental illnesses are completely normal, and many people are well educated about them. Unfortunately, back in Joanna's times, it was a way for her to be played by her father, husband, and son. They all used Joanna's mental illnesses as a way for them to rise higher in society. While it did work, it cost Joanna her freedom and her reputation, as to this day, all she is known for is Joanna the Mad. Our second and last queen we will be exploring today is Maria I of Portugal. Maria I, also known as Maria the Mad, was born in Lisbon, Portugal, to Joseph I of Portugal and Mariana Victoria of Spain. At birth, she was already titled the Princess Ibera. Maria's parents had no sons, and she only had 3 younger sisters. This made her next in line to the throne, after her father. So, after he ascended to the throne when she was 16, she was given the titles of Princess of Brazil and Duchess of Braganza. Maria's father, Joseph, turned out to be a lazy ruler. He would often retire to the palace of Queles instead of doing his royal duties. Instead, Sebastião José, also known as the Marquis of Pombal, was a much more qualified pick for ruling over the Portuguese kingdom. Pombal had been close to Joseph since Joseph's childhood, as Pombal used to be the Portuguese ambassador for Austria and was very close with Joseph's mother. In 1755, Portugal was struck with the Lisbon earthquake. Around 100,000 people lost their lives, and the earthquake was characterized by tsunamis, flames, and the almost complete destruction of the city. After the disaster, Joseph began suffering from intense claustrophobia and refused to stay anywhere indoors. These conditions to his mental health allowed the Marquis of Pombal to swoop in and take over the Portuguese government. His close relationship with the king helped legitimize his power as well. While the Marquis of Pombal was in charge, many questioned and disputed his power over the government. The noble Távora family was one of the main rivals of Pombal. Pombal knew that losing Maria would mean the end of his political career in Portugal, as it was the king's favor that was keeping him in power. He needed to think of a swift yet subtle plan to eliminate his rivals. One night, King Joseph was heading back to his home after spending the night with his Távora mistress, when he was attacked by some thieves. While the king made it out safely, Pombal took this attack as an opportunity to wipe out the Távora family after pinning the attack on them. After accusing the entire family of attempted regicide, he publicly tortured and executed all the males in the family, wiping the entire family and its name from the map. With the Távora family eliminated, Maria secured her spot on becoming the heir to the Portuguese throne. However, there was one dilemma. By Portuguese law, royal princesses were required to renounce their name to the throne if they married a foreign prince. Maria could also only marry someone that was of her status. This made her marital choices quite slim, with her only choice being to marry her own uncle. So in 1760, at the age of 25, Maria married her uncle, her father's younger brother, Peter III. They would later have 7 children, but only 3 actually reached adulthood. In 1777, Maria's father, Joseph I, died, leading Maria to ascend the throne and becoming Portugal's first undisputed queen regnant. Now, here's where the fun begins. Many people described Maria as a good ruler who was strong and decisive. Not only that, but she was seen as quite kind too, as her first act as queen was to banish the Marquis of Pombal and set free many of his political prisoners. Maria oversaw the reconstruction and development of Lisbon, and for 9 long years ruled the kingdom quite well. However, this was just the calm before the storm, as in 1786 Maria's madness was officially noticed. Many state that it was just a normal day for Maria, as she was signing an act to reverse one of her father's policies. While doing this, though, she started to scratch off her own signature and began screaming about how she was in hell. The fit was so bad that she had to actually be carried out by her own courtiers back to her apartments. Maria's mental state would only grow worse, as in May of 1786, her husband died. The queen was so devastated that she banned all entertainment and music in the Portuguese court. Religious mania would also overtake her brain, as she made sure all festivals or gatherings would resemble religious ceremonies. Her mental state only deteriorated even further when her eldest son, Joseph, her daughter, Mariana Victoria, and her grandson, Carlos, all died of smallpox within the same year in 1788. Maria was overwhelmed with grief and guilt as she blamed herself for her children's deaths, as she had chosen not to inoculate them, or, in today's terms, vaccinate them against the deadly disease. The tragedies would only continue when in 1791, her confessor and close friend of 30 years died of a stroke. Maria's mental state would spiral downwards as she became extremely depressed and began having delusions of herself burning in hell. Guests would complain of her awful screams that would echo down the hallways. One guest even said that they had never heard of such agonizing screams like the ones he heard from the queen, who constantly screamed, "Oh Jesus, oh Jesus." Maria's conditions mirrored those displayed by her contemporary, King George III of Britain. King George's doctor, Francis Willis, was begged to come to Portugal and help Maria, as he had managed to successfully cure George. Willis attempted many of the same treatments he had performed on George with Maria, and even wanted to take her back to Britain. However, the Portuguese court refused, and Willis left Portugal, stating Maria's condition as incurable. In 1794, Maria's current residence of the Royal Hut, built by her father, burned to the ground as it was made completely of wood. While the royal family got out safely, this terrified the already delusional Maria, as it brought her nightmares of burning in hell to fruition. Due to Maria's mental state, she was obviously not fit to rule, so her eldest surviving son, John VI, took over as Prince Regent to rule in his mother's place, even though he was quite reluctant to. In 1793, the French Revolution was in full swing, especially with the public beheadings of the French king Louis XVI and his queen Marie Antoinette. During the Revolution, Prince John signed a pact with Britain and Spain to go to war against revolutionary France. However, after France successfully invaded northeastern Spain, Spain was forced to go back on this pact and switch its alliance to be with France. Next, the French turned their focus on Spain's neighbor, Portugal. Napoleon Bonaparte, the leader of the French government at the time, forced Spain to make Portugal switch sides and ally with France so they could all attack Britain. However, Prince John refused this, causing Spain to invade Portugal in the War of the Oranges in 1801. This caused Portugal to cede half of their Guyana colonies over in South America to France in the Treaty of Madrid, signed on September 29, 1801. Even after all of this, Prince John refused to submit to French rule, so Napoleon decided to just invade Portugal himself. At this, the British government urged the Portuguese to escape, so on November 29, 1807, the entire Braganza royal family was forced to flee the country over to South America, where their largest colony, known as Brazil, was located. Attempting to transfer Maria to Brazil proved to be a challenge, as she was screaming the entire time when being moved from her royal palace to the docks. While she was in the carriage, she was convinced that she would be attacked and robbed just like her father did all those years ago. In 1808, the royal family arrived in Rio de Janeiro. This made Maria the first reigning European ruler to ever set foot in the Americas. However, she did not make a good impression with the people there, as she was terrified of the natives that inhabited the land and continued to scream about how she was being chased by demons. Maria was sent to live in a convent under the care of nuns while living in Brazil. However, on August 1st, 1808, British General Arthur Wellesley landed a British army in Lisbon, Portugal, and finally defeated Napoleon in 1815. However, instead of returning home to Portugal, Prince John elevated the Brazil colony to have the status of a kingdom, so he could stay in Brazil where he preferred life. Maria would also be able to remain in Brazil and became the first queen of the United Kingdom of Portugal, Brazil, and the Algarves. However, her mental state was far too gone for her to be able to comprehend her new titles. Finally, on March 20th, 1816, Maria died in the Carmel convent in Rio de Janeiro at the age of 81. Her body was sent back to Lisbon, where she would be buried in the mausoleum. Even with her madness in her later life, Queen Maria is greatly admired in Brazilian and Portuguese history due to the tremendous changes she brought about the countries in her earlier reign, and is celebrated as a strong female ruler. Maria was likely to have had major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. But that still begs the question of what could have caused Maria's sudden madness. I mean, she was fine in her early life. How did her brain just switch off like that? Well, as I've hinted already, Maria was the product of massive royal inbreeding. Both of her parents were from noble families, her father being part of the House of Braganza, and her mother being part of the House of Bourbon. These two houses were competitors and frequently married each other to seal treaties and agreements. They were also both descended from the Habsburgs, a family infamous for its prolific inbreeding. Joanna of Castile, the queen we previously discussed, was also related to the Habsburgs, which might explain her madness as well. It's obvious that incest was the cause for Maria's madness. Inbreeding doesn't exactly create the strongest DNA, making those who were the product of it more open to catching a genetic disorder. There have been records that even two of her younger sisters shared the same madness that Maria did, proving that this is definitely a genetic thing. Historians suggest her madness could have been a result of dementia, which is a common illness that results from inbreeding. The reason why dementia showed up relatively early in Maria, first showing up when she was only 52 instead of the more common age of 65, was because of inbreeding. She had more recessive genes than someone who wasn't inbred, which meant that there was more genes associated with dementia getting turned on. This results in dementia appearing more severely, as well as earlier, since Maria's DNA was fragile, causing her body to age much more quickly. Another illness that she probably would have inherited due to inbreeding is porphyria, a genetic disorder where their liver allows toxins to build up in the body, which can cause symptoms in the nervous system, as well as resulting in mental illness. This could all be applied to Joanna of Castile as well, since she was also a member of the Habsburgs family. So, moral of the story, don't do incest. I mean, come on guys. There's a lot of fish in the sea, and I'm sure none of you watching are obligated to any royal throne and can only marry your first cousin or something. Genetics and stress can cause anybody, even a royal, to go mad. Don't let noble titles or crowns fool you, as mad kings and queens are prevalent all throughout history.